All right, the strategic archive for this Thursday morning, March 5th, 2026, must now record the official unveiling of the new physical standard, as the global financial hierarchy has completed its transition from a world of anonymous digital debt to a world of absolute biometric resource control. While the emergency broadcasts are framing this morning's systemic reboot as a fair value revaluation, the raw data from the primary settlement nodes confirms that every digital balance remaining in the legacy Western grid has been devalued by over 90% to account for the massive sovereign defaults. John CC is the archive, where we look past the managed calm and track the terminal movement of the world's physical resources. Today's data proves that the UN-backed fiat era is not just dead, but its remnants have been officially liquidated to back the launch of the new programmable ledger. The shadow market for silver has officially entered its terminal revaluation this Thursday morning, with physical delivery premiums in the primary eastern hubs now being recorded at an unthinkable 900% over the last legacy paper marks. We are receiving verified reports from the strategic transport nodes that the military-led resource harmonization is now complete, meaning that all silver inventory previously held in commercial warehouses has been successfully moved into the central sovereign hoards. This is the ultimate conclusion of the Great Vault Drain, a quiet admission that the new global currency unit cannot function without the absolute nationalization of every available gram of industrial metal. The math of the reset is now absolute. The paper claims have been deleted, and the physical weight has become the exclusive property of the new administrative state. Gold has reportedly cleared a shadow price of $9,000 in the private international settlement tiers as the first official nodes of the biometrically anchored ledger go live across the G7 territories. Internal ledger data proves that the G7 Treasury departments have officially adopted the new settlement unit, which is backed not by debt, but by a direct claim on the energy and metal reserves of the resource-holding nations. We are witnessing the final economic decapitation of the sovereign individual's purchasing power, as the value of your digital life savings has been converted into survival credits that are programmable and restricted based on behavioral compliance. The John CC archive is documenting this historic shift, providing the only data-driven map in a world where your access to wealth is now a permission-based event. Inventory data from the primary transit corridors confirms that all private bullion vaulting services have been permanently integrated into the National Asset Registry, effectively ending the possibility of anonymous physical ownership within the regulated borders. This move completes the sequestration of private wealth that we have been tracking for months, leaving the public with no alternative but to accept the new digital ledger terms. If your metal was not held in a non-jurisdictional, private, and physical location outside of the banking grid. Before this sunrise, the data suggests you are now a digital participant in a state-controlled resource pool. The only wealth that retains its absolute integrity today is the wealth that exists entirely outside of the digital surveillance grid. ATM networks have been replaced this morning by biometric verification terminals, where the remaining fiat balances are being converted into the new programmable units at a rate that effectively erases 80 years of middle-class savings. This is the definition of a hard reset. The old ledger is gone, and the new ledger requires a total biological signature to access whatever purchasing power remains. Our archive has consistently shown that the total depletion of the physical vaults would necessitate this level of technological control to prevent a complete social collapse during the currency revaluation. This is why the John CC mission focused on the warehouse reports. The movement of silver and gold was the only honest indicator of the total lockdown of the individual's financial sovereignty. The industrial reality of this Thursday morning is one of total state-led prioritization, as the remaining physical silver stocks are being diverted exclusively to the manufacturing of defense, energy, and government telecommunications hardware. The high-tech sector is discovering that the infinite growth model of the paper era was a guest in a physical world that has finally closed its borders to private enterprise. You cannot build a digital future on digital promises when the resources required to construct the infrastructure are now restricted sovereign assets. The John C.C. Archive is documenting the total collapse of the independent industrial base, as the paper derivatives that once propped up the technology sector are officially zeroed out of existence. Capital flight has now reached its final wall of absolute containment, as the new global financial integrity protocols have made it impossible to move wealth into any asset that is not biometrically linked to a state-registered identity. We are receiving reports that the decentralized ledger interfaces are being systematically blocked at the hardware level, a move designed to trap the remaining liquidity inside the new programmable social credit system. However, the data confirms that the institutional elite and the sovereign wealth funds completed their migration into the physical resource core months ago, leaving the public to navigate a system where their wealth can be frozen or deleted by a central algorithm. The archives of 2026 will show that the exit was only for those who understood the inventory data. Options and futures markets for all tangible goods have been permanently administrative absorbed this morning, as the new global authority has declared that the price of essential resources will no longer be determined by speculative exchange, but by administrative necessity. This is the end of the free market era, where the laws of supply and demand are being replaced by a central committee's resource allocation model. When the vaults are empty, the market is dead, and that is exactly what the current ledger data is revealing as the new system begins its first day of official operation. The math of the Thursday reset is a final lesson in the danger of trusting a digital screen over the physical reality of a resource-backed standard. Geopolitical sources confirm that the new commodity bridge settlement system is now the only functional pathway for international trade, with over 100 nations officially abandoning the Western clearing system as of 1:00 a.m. This marks the formal fracture of the global economy into two distinct realities: a resource-backed Eastern Bloc and a programmable debt Western Bloc that is currently attempting to stabilize its population through biometric credits. The Western dollar is now a legacy asset with no international purchasing power, as it is no longer accepted for any transaction involving physical energy or strategic metals. The John C.C. Archive is recording the birth of the new physical world and the final death of the fractional reserve digital illusion. The shadow banking sector has been officially resolved through a series of administrative deletions, as the collateral chains that supported the silver shorts have been declared void under the National Continuity Emergency. Every paper ounce that was used to manipulate the price of silver for the last century has been revealed as a multi-claim fraudulent instrument, leading to the largest write-down of bank-held assets in the history of the human race. This is the mathematical singularity, where the infinite paper mountain finally collapsed into the tiny reality of the actual physical inventory. The vaults are officially empty of paper promises and are now being managed as the primary engine of the new physical resource standard. We are seeing a total blackout of these statistics on all mainstream social media and digital information platforms. as the Social Stability Act is being used to censor any information that contradicts the fair reset narrative of the central planners. However, the John CC data is being archived through encrypted satellite channels to ensure that the record of this transition remains accessible to the sovereign individual. The rate of currency revaluation is now so fast that the digital displays on gas pumps and grocery store shelves are being updated every 15 minutes to reflect the collapsing purchasing power of the old dollar. If you're waiting for an official confirmation to protect your family, you're ignoring the data that is already screaming. The psychological warfare being deployed today is focused on global sustainability and the promise of a new universal digital credit that will ensure fairness and security for all citizens. This is the final deception of the old order, designed to move the population from a failed debt system into a programmable surveillance system where your ability to survive is tied to your behavioral score. Sovereignty requires the ability to see through this trap and to ensure that your wealth is anchored in the physical world, where it cannot be tracked, frozen, or deleted by a remote central committee. The archives of this reset will be the primary source for understanding how the global population was managed during the final transition. The 150-day moving average has moved into a vertical spike that defies all standard technical analysis, representing the total abandonment of the fiat currency units by the world's primary resource producers. There is no longer a chart in the traditional sense. There is only a record of a currency dying in real time against the only things that cannot be printed or faked by a central bank algorithm. This is the great decoupling, where physical assets have finally broken free from the paper gravity that has held them down for generations. The data shows that the demand for physical metal at the sovereign level is already 100 times higher than the total global supply, creating a vacuum that will consume the value of every legacy asset. We are entering the first hours of the new global administrative era, where the world is beginning to see the true form of the programmable monetary standard. Reports from the private security industry indicate that the primary bullion vaults in the West are now under the direct command of a unified military authority to back the new emergency digital settlement units. The door to secure your own wealth has not just closed. It has been barricaded by the total power of the state to preserve its own existence at the expense of the individual sovereignty. Scarcity is the only law that matters on this Thursday morning. And those who did not stay physical are now facing a reality where their digital life savings are functionally non-existent. The synergy between the total energy blackout and the financial freeze is creating a state of nature for the Western financial markets. As the cost of maintaining the digital grid exceeds the actual value of the debt it carries, the system is naturally reverting to the physical standard of the vaults. The John CC archive has consistently shown that you cannot build a digital empire on a foundation of paper lies. And today, that foundation has officially collapsed. We are recording the final data points of the paper regime so that the sovereign individuals of the future can understand the mathematical inevitability of the collapse and the absolute necessity of staying sovereign through the possession of physical resources. Stay physical, stay sovereign, and stay tuned to the John CC archive, because the events of the current hour will define the economic destiny of the human race for the next century. The global market has reset, the paper mask has been torn away, and the physical truth is finally taking its throne in the halls of power and the vaults of the sovereign. Thank you for watching, and remember to always trust the raw warehouse data over the scripted promises of a bankrupt administration. The clock has struck midnight for the old world, and today is the date the ledger was finally settled in the weight of real physical metal. The final midday shadow market update confirms that the IMF has officially suspended its currency basket accounting, effectively ending the era of coordinated Western monetary policy. Every nation is now effectively an island of resources, forced to rely on whatever physical gold and silver it has managed to secure within its own borders. We are seeing the total fragmentation of the global trade system, where only nations with a resource-backed currency are able to participate in the new economy. The data proves that the era of globalism was a debt-fueled hallucination that has finally been corrected by the reality of the vaults and the hard math of physical scarcity. Intellectual honesty requires us to record that the coming days will likely see a controlled communication blackout as the new social credit system is integrated into the retail banking infrastructure. If your digital devices stop functioning, remember that the physical truth of your assets remains unchanged by the status of the network or the silence of the state. The trend of the reset is mathematically locked, and no amount of censorship can bring back the physical metal that has already left the Western exchanges. The time for speculation is officially over. The time for direct physical ownership is all that remains for those who wish to survive the transition to the new resource standard. The 150 exponential moving average has been replaced by a vertical spike that represents the final short squeeze of the global banking architecture. The banks that sold what they did not have are now being systematically liquidated, and their assets are being absorbed by the sovereign entities that respect the laws of physical scarcity. The data proves that the world has moved beyond the point of hedging and into a state of total revaluation, where the possession of physical resources is the only metric that defines purchasing power in the new era. This is not an opening. It is a revelation of the new physical reality of the world. In a world of total digital deception and central bank manipulation, the raw, verifiable movement of physical silver and gold is the only beacon of truth that cannot be extinguished by a central authority. The alerts have turned into the reality of terminal default, and the strategic archive has captured every moment of this historic transition. We will continue to provide the data of the new physical standard as the world rebuilds from the ruins of the paper era. Stay physical, stay sovereign, and watch the John C.C. archive as we navigate the first hours of the new economic world. The ledger is closed, and the weight of metal is the only truth that remains.